In the early 1990s, I was working with the Council on Child Abuse and Neglect here in Columbia, and it became evident after having been there several years that many of the young mothers who were coming through a court-mandated program at the council had begun their families as teenagers. And a lot of them had had multiple children by the time that they were 20. And so we started thinking about what all of the consequences, all the ultimate bad outcomes with pregnant teens, and when they'd have to drop out of school, they didn't have an education, most of them didn't have support from the fathers. So they're living in poverty and adverse conditions, and under all of that stress, taking out their frustrations on their children. And so it seemed to me like we had some work to do on the front end, because in addition to no education, living in poverty, being in court due to child maltreatment, a lot of these moms had no prenatal care, so they had low birth weight babies who subsequently had developmental disabilities, would have trouble in school. The mother didn't have the skills to help them when they started having trouble of their own, and kids who don't see any hope for graduating from high school or a prosperous future engage in risky behaviors, and it starts all over again. So there's a cycle. The primary challenge was the perception, the public perception that this was somebody else's problem, number one. And number two, it was a very controversial topic. People associated somehow teen pregnancy with abortion, so they thought if you talked about preventing teen pregnancy that you were advocating abortion. And so there were a lot of minds to change. And so as a result, I got involved in a group called the Greater Columbia Teen Pregnancy Prevention Council. And at the time, there were like a handful of those sorts of organizations around the state. And we took it upon ourselves to start legislative advocacy and did a legislative awareness day. Over the next couple of years, I spoke to legislative committees about the social and economic and educational and health impact or consequences of teen pregnancy. And it became sort of evident after a couple of years that since there were so few of us doing that there needed to be some sort of coordinated effort at the state level to bring all the people together who had recognized that there was a problem in their community and wanted to do something about it. So I wrote a grant to the March of Dimes in 1993. In 1994, the grant was approved and the campaign was launched.
We have to be proud of the fact that we have been able to work across the state in many communities, providing them the services, the technical support, and financial support, and that has enabled them to reduce the pregnancy rate in the state. Because teen pregnancy prevention is more than just talking about not having sex. It's helping young people understand that they can prepare themselves for a future that is brighter than the one that where they may be involved now. The situation, it doesn't matter where you are, it's important where you want to go. I am, and I'm sure others are really proud of what we have done in the state or throughout the state in exposing young people, but also families and communities like faith organizations, helping them understand that they play an important role in the reduction of teen pregnancy. One of the things that we started maybe 3 or 4 years ago, is community sponsorships, where we provide a small award to communities during Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month, which is May, and Let's Talk Month, which is October. And during both of those times, we've had several faith communities repeatedly applied for and gotten awards because they are providing wonderful programs through persons within their communities. One of the main challenges is that we can't become complacent. We can't feel that because the numbers have decreased, that the problems are over, because as I like to say, there are teens coming along every year. I think it's important that we remember our focus, and that our focus is always the young people. That's what we have to always remember.
I have worked for the campaign, or did work for the campaign, for almost 19 years. So I had the opportunity to work with every director. And when I arrived at the campaign, there were actually 3 people who were employed. And the day that I arrived, one of those announced a resignation. And that left 3. And I always loved coming in on the ground floor and helping to build. And so that was something that drew me. Again, the cause was very passionate about who doesn't want to see young people delay childbearing until they are old enough, until they have the resources that they need. We were really here providing a tremendous service. We went to communities and brought groups together so that they could not only learn from us, but they could learn from each other. Because that was one of the things that providers wanted to do a lot. They wanted to know, what are people on the ground who are doing this work every day just like me? Tell me about your successes and tell me how that's happening, so that they could perhaps emulate some of those things. One of my proudest moments here at the campaign was the very first time that we applied for federal money. Of course, there are resources here locally, but certainly not enough to address the need. And as the economy in South Carolina is impacted, then some of the organizations that were providing funding weren't able to do it at the level that they had done it before. So we, as an organization, applied for federal funding, not really thinking that we would get it, but we did. And that gave us an opportunity to extend the reach of our work further into local communities. That was the beginning of it, but every year since, we were able to access federal funds to enhance the work that we did as an organization. What do we do next? Which is where I think the new work is coming in, around working with health services and health service providers. So I see some of those things kind of as a challenge, but also yet an opportunity to expand the work. We have to continue to share the message. We have to continue to talk to parents about the fact that their role is critically important as the primary sex educator of their children. We have to continue to talk to communities about, yes, this issue impacts you whether you have a young child or not. Those things, in my opinion, will never go away. There will always be the need for it.
We knew that our responsibility was to promote across this state the programs and services that we knew worked. That was a real critical emphasis of ours. We didn't get dragged down into what I sometimes call the moral mud of this issue. And lots of people want to argue all the time, well, should we be talking about abstinence? Should we be giving young people access to contraception? Should we be teaching sex ed in schools or not? We get into these arguments and they can be very distracting. And instead we said, what we prefer is promoting what works, whatever that means. Programs, services, access The things that we know can be effective, that's what we want to promote. That's what we want to train people to implement. That's what we want to fund across this state. One of the staples of the South Carolina campaign to prevent teen pregnancy over the years has been the annual Summer Institute. The Institute has been around almost as long as the organization has. And my friend Don Flowers, who was the board chair of this organization, the founding board chair actually, then did a second stint as the board chair, as a emeritus board member now. Don Flowers likes to say that back in those early days, we could have put the people who were concerned about the issue of preventing teen pregnancy in a phone booth. That's where we could have hosted the conference. We couldn't fit in a phone booth anymore. We could barely fit in the ballroom of the conference center. Those are amazing memories that I'll take with me always. Over time, what started to happen was that we were making an influence and making a difference on key stakeholders across this state. And when we started hearing people stand up at Chamber of Commerce meetings or business meetings or education meetings at the Department of Ed and say things like, we need to invest more in preventing teen pregnancy. We need to work more with the South Carolina campaign to prevent teen pregnancy. When the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield or one of the vice presidents at AT&T or the leadership at the Chamber of Commerce started saying things like that, and that happened, this sort of light bulb started to go on in our office, like, it's happening, it's working, we're making a difference. We're starting to normalize some of these conversations about investing in young people and investing in teen pregnancy prevention. Watching that trajectory unfold in real time was pretty special. There are some really, really special people in this state who are doing really amazing things to make our state better and specifically to make it better for young people. I think one of the pieces of magic that we were able to latch on to at the South Carolina campaign to prevent teen pregnancy over the last 25 years is lift up, build up, and support these absolutely wonderful, special people across the state that were doing this work. It's never been about this organization. It's always been about them.
I was first introduced to the South Carolina campaign to prevent teen pregnancy when I became the Title X director at the Department of Health and Environmental Control. And that was in 2010. I was a nurse practitioner working down in Horry County in Georgetown and Williamsburg, and had come up here to become the Title X director. One of my very first meetings was over here at the campaign. It was, if we are going to continue to do good work preventing teen pregnancy, the campaign needed to continue the partnership that they had always had with DHEC. And that was really my first face-to-face, what does the campaign do and how can they help us in the clinical world? And it's been a great partnership ever since. It was a great partnership before, and it's still a great partnership. The biggest challenge for me from day one was, what is the future? What does the future look like for the campaign? We had had tremendous success in working on federal grants, but federal grants can come and go as per the administration. And when the election that produced our current president happened, we knew our future was going to look very different. Teen pregnancy prevention is not always high on the agenda. And so when we knew that the administration was going to change, we knew we were going to change. And that future was not as mapped out. And so when you take the lead of an organization such as ours who has experienced such success, you really have to worry about what the next rendition is going to be and how to get there. Because you have to get the hearts and minds and the bodies of all the organization and all of our partners in line with the new vision. And that's what I think was my first challenge. We had to say, what was the success that we have enjoyed over the past years? What got us here? And how can we translate that success into something new and different while never abandoning the mission? Because ultimately, you do the same work, but in different ways, maybe with non-traditional partners, maybe in non-traditional ways, but never losing sight of where we want to go. And that is to help every teen to have the best teenage years they can possibly have.